gentleman from Vermont.
Madam President, I ask consent the call of the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Madam President, it may seem like a long time ago, but it's only 3 months ago when Congress came together in a rare bipartisan fashion and we passed the CARES Act. We did that to help address the unprecedented needs of the country and the American people as we began to address a global pandemic. It was the third emergency appropriations bill Congress has passed this year to address the impact of the coronavirus. Yet, despite its scope and its size, we knew then, and we all acknowledged then, that absent a miracle, it would not be the last one required. And since that time, we all know the number of COVID-19 cases have continued to grow at an alarming rate, as have the number of deaths. I wish we could say we were through the worst of it and that things could now return to normal. We know we can't. Florida, Texas, Arizona, North Carolina, Alabama, and Oklahoma, just to name a few, are seeing an alarming spike in cases. Health experts are ringing the alarm bell, including even the Secretary of Health and Human Services, who had previously spent a lot of time trying to defend this administration's anemic response. We all know this virus is far from vanquished. As numbers continue to rise across the nation and new hotspots emerge, it's clear we're going to need another emergency appropriations bill to address this epidemic. And frankly, Madam President, we need it now. At times like this, the country needs real leadership and vision. We need to get out in front of this crisis, not make all kinds of response after the fact. Now, we know that leadership is not coming from the White House. The President has made very clear in his statement that he believes opening the economy and fighting the virus are competing actions, and he gives the American people a false choice. I believe that only if we effectively fight the virus are we then able to open the economy, whether in my state or any other state. Now, 6 weeks ago, a month and a half ago, the House of Representatives passed the HEROES Act. It's a strong proposal. It provides assistance to struggling families. It supports state and local governments. It battles the virus by funding a responsible testing program. It recognizes the sacrifice being made by grocery store clerks, first responders, nurses, doctors, truckers, and more. It makes critical changes to programs like SNAP, which supports some of those among us who are struggling the most. And so let's talk about what we've done. In the first week, or the second week, or the third week, or the fourth week, or the fifth week, or the sixth week, since the House passed that bill, what has the Senate done? Nothing in the first week, nothing in the second week, nothing in the third week, nothing in the fourth week, nothing in the fifth week, nothing in the sixth week. In fact, the majority leader has publicly stated that he and the White House want to take a pause before considering any further emergency legislation related to COVID-19. The White House alternates between silence on the issue and sending contradictory message on what it thinks needs to be done. But while we wait, cases continue to climb, the death toll mounts, and people continue to struggle. The people who have COVID, You're not able to tell them to pause and it'll go away. You can't tell the doctors and nurses who are working almost around the clock, working to exhaustion, just pause while we think about this. That doesn't work. The fact is, they're dealing with this every single day and night, 7 days a week. They would love to have a pause, but the reality is such they can't. And to those who say it's premature to act on another bill, well, let's look at what we already know. At the end of July, the federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensations Program that Congress included in the CARES Act, that expires. That's next month. Next month starts tomorrow. This program provides an additional $600 per week in unemployment benefits to more than 28 million Americans. In many cases, the money is the difference between paying rent and getting evicted. Money keeps electricity on, it keeps food on the table, it feeds their children. At the same time, many state-initiated eviction moratoriums expire next month, which begins just in a few hours, as does the eviction moratorium for people in federally assisted housing, included in the CARES Act. And the 1-2 punch of the expiration of federal unemployment benefits with the end of eviction protections has the potential to displace a record number of Americans into homelessness. And what about our struggling small businesses? In my state of Vermont, the small businesses are the backbone of our economy. Well, what about them? As of today, the Small Business Administration can no longer approve loans from the popular Personal Paycheck Protection, the PPP program. Now, parents are worried about their children. They struggle to find safe child care. They wonder, are schools going to open in the fall or not? And if and when they open, many schools will be using some form of online instruction. But over 16 million children in this country do not have internet service at home. 12 million children do not have a home computer or a laptop to use. We can't wait until the fall to figure this out. It'll be too late. And I'd note for many of us, every single senator here has rural areas in her or his state. In a lot of those areas, there is no internet service. We also know we need to protect our elections. Due to the pandemic, voters are using common sense and they're choosing to vote by mail in record numbers, something we have already done in Vermont. But many states are unprepared to meet this demand. They look at us. Every one of us will say, yeah, of course we want to protect voters. Of course we want to protect votes. Of course every vote counts. Of course it's the American way to vote. Of course we want people to vote. Ha, ha, and ha. Congress has provided only a fraction of the funding needed by states to prepare for the general election. So voters don't have to choose between exercising their constitutional right of voting or getting very ill. Now we know states cannot cover election costs on their own. They're cash-strapped already from responding to the epidemic. And these votes will be on state and local and federal elections. The Wall Street Journal has estimated that state and local government have already furloughed or eliminated 1.5 million jobs since the pandemic began. That might look like just a statistic to some, but these are teachers, these are firefighters, these are healthcare workers. Congress, for the sake of this country, need to enact another tranche of funding for state and local governments. We have to help them deal with lost revenue. Our economy is not going to recover. It will never recover. It's imperative that America steps up and addresses the pandemic abroad. We're part of the world. COVID-related needs around the world are spiking. We can't defeat the virus right here at home if we do not act now to assist other countries in the global fight against this pandemic, as we have in the past with other pandemics. Senate Republicans and President Trump must demonstrate leadership. You are not going to stop this health crisis by tweets. You're going to stop it by real action. They're going to begin negotiations on the next relief bill now. Again, real negotiations, not political inspired tweets. If we do that, we can pass a bill next month. Because delay makes no one safer. It does nothing to box in the virus. It does nothing to reopen the economy. Now, in a few short days, the Senate's going to recess for 2 weeks. We lost that 6-week window in June to address these issues because Republican leaders refused to act. And if we do nothing else before the Senate goes out of session, we should do what all the experts agree is needed if we're going to defeat this virus. Create a comprehensive testing and contact tracing program and provide the resources needed to implement it for all 50 of our states. This is how other countries have succeeded in flattening the curve and containing the spread. Yet in a shocking abdication of leadership, the president has thrown up his hands. He's walked away from this issue. He even said at a recent campaign rally that we should be doing less testing, not more. That's not leadership. That's politics. That's not leadership. And that's not keeping Americans safe. I want all Americans to be safe. I don't care whether they're Republicans, Democrats, Independents. I want all Americans to be safe. His political press secretary tried to say he was kidding, but he said he was not. And in a sign that he wasn't kidding, the federal government recently announced it would shut down numerous federally funded testing sites across the country, including 6 in Texas, where cases are rising. It's astonishing. I've been here with every president, Republican and Democratic alike, from the time of President Ford. All of these presidents in both parties were willing to show leadership in serious matters. But if this president can't or won't show leadership, then the Congress must step in and do it. And I'll tell you what I learned when I came here, and never expected to become the dean of the Senate, but I think about it often. I was told by both Republican and Democratic leaders at that time that the Senate can and should be the conscience of the nation. And I've seen Republicans and Democrats come together and exercise that conscience at times when we so needed it. Where is that now? We exercise it working with Republican and Democratic presidents. Where is that now? Nobody owns a seat in the United States Senate, but we are given 6-year terms where we should be able to think of doing the right thing and not just worry about the next tweet or the next news break or what is said 5 minutes from now. We have 6-year terms so we can sit back and do what is right. Let's be the conscience of the nation. I've always been proudest of this body when I've seen Republicans and Democrats come together and do that. Now, I'll just take one item. The HEROES Act passed 6 weeks ago in the House, created the COVID-19 National Testing and Contact Tracing Initiative. It requires the Department of Health and Human Services, in coordination with state and local governments, to develop a comprehensive testing, contact tracing, surveillance, and monitoring system. It provides $75 billion to implement it. If we want to save lives, if we want to reopen the country, and we want to get our economy going again, well, we ought to at least pass this initiative. It does not help the country, whether it's the president or anybody else, saying at a political rally, we're doing too much testing, or we should slow down testing, or I've told my people not to do as much testing. I want my family to be safe. I want my wife and my children to be safe, and their children and their spouses to be safe. I want all Vermonters, but I want everybody in all 50 of our states to be safe. And we need testing. Now, I'm soon going to ask unanimous consent on a particular item, and I understand that Senator Alexander is going to come to the floor to object, so I will withhold making that request. Again, doing things the way I recall the Senate being, and give him time to come here. But you know, Madam President, think what I said. All senators should. There are only 100 of us. We represent over 320 million Americans. They go across the political spectrum. They're all races, they're all economic backgrounds, they're all ages. But they have 100 people who can speak for them and speak for the conscience of this nation. Madam President, I am proud to be a United States Senator, but I am not proud when we don't stand up and act as the conscience of the nation. What is the use of being one of the 100 people who represent this great country, who represent and know and hold the history of this country, who've helped shape the history of this country through treaties, through constitutional amendments, through debates, on everything? What does it do to be a member of the 100 in this body if we cannot reflect the conscience of the nation? Now, Madam President, as Senator Alexander is not yet here, I am going to suggest an absence of a quorum, but I'm going to ask unanimous consent that I be the person next recognized to call off that quorum call.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Alexander.
Madam President,
Senator from Vermont,
I ask that the call of the quorum be dispensed with.
without objection.
And Madam President, as I noted before, I was withholding unanimous consent request until the very distinguished senior senator was here. And so I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of calendar number 140, H.R. 2740, that the Leahy substitute amendment that would provide funding for COVID testing and tracing and is at the desk be considered and agreed to. The bill is amended be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there an objection?
Madam President, reserving the right to object,
Senator from Tennessee,
I'm glad to see my distinguished friend from Vermont of many years. And what I would like to say to him is that we altogether appropriated a record amount of $3 trillion, another $3 trillion in credit, much of which has not even been spent yet, some of which hasn't been distributed to states yet. We are in the midst of reviewing the spending of that money. I know our own committee has had 5 hearings this month on COVID and its consequences. And I think the wiser course with the taxpayers' money is to wait until the $3 trillion we've appropriated has been distributed to states, has been spent, is carefully reviewed, and in the meantime, we'll work very closely with our friends on the other side to determine what else needs to be done during the month of July. So I object.
objections heard.
Madam President,
Senator from Vermont,
I would ask consent that my full statement be included in the record, together with the additions I made here on the floor.
without objection.
Madam President, I yield the floor.